On March 16, 2014, Full Disclosure hosted its annual brunch at the California Yacht Club. Our theme for this year was to honor President James Madison, who was known as the father of our Constitution. The master of ceremonies was Full Disclosure producer T.J. Johnston. The program began with the welcome from executive producer Leslie Dutton. The audience enjoyed presentations by G. Edward Griffin and former Los Angeles Sheriff Lieutenant Patrick Gomez.
Our featured speaker today started his career as a child actor, but rather than growing into a teen drug addict, he, like more current stars, he became a radio station manager before the age of 20. He began a career of producing documentaries and books on often debated topics. From 1962 to 1975, he completed 9 books and 7 film productions. The Federal Reserve System, The Creature from Jekyll Island, which we're going to hear about in the next video, was published in 1994 and is now in its 5th revision. This popular book has been a business bestseller and has been reprinted in Japanese in 2005 and in German in 2006. We'll hear much more about this in our video presentation coming up later in our program. Right now, he's here to tell us about the 4th President of the United States, the man considered the father of our Constitution, James Madison. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome G. Edward Griffin.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm glad I'm among friends today because I'm going to be wandering around in my topic. When Leslie called me a couple of weeks ago and asked me to speak here, I said, well, fine, I'd be glad to do that. What's my topic? She said, well, you know, it's James Madison. I said, okay, that's a big topic. What about James Madison? What do you want me to talk about? She said, oh, about 20 minutes. So I considered that to be my cue to take this wherever I wanted to. And I like that flexibility. It may not be to your best liking, but anyway, I'm going to wander a little bit and maybe give you a little different presentation than you had anticipated, especially you, Leslie. I thought originally I was going to try and do something rather classical. I was thinking, how do you start a talk like this? And I was reminded of these words that came from the pen of William Shakespeare in his play Julius Caesar. In the words supposedly of Mark Antony, he said, I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. I thought, well, that sounds kind of classical. Maybe I can twist that around and say, I come not to bury Madison, but to praise him, which was my original intent. And that would be an easy presentation to make. I whipped through my notes and went on the internet and crammed a lot of this stuff back up into my frontal lobes. And certainly there is a lot to praise James Madison about, if I may end a preposition with. So, yeah, we all know this. We know that he was the father of the Constitution, father of the Bill of Rights. He was a great defender of personal liberties. One of the things I remember years ago when I was finally getting it together on this business of republics versus democracies, the fact that democracy wasn't really all that hot, as I had been taught in school, that democracy was one of the things that concerned our founding fathers, unbridled democracy or excessive democracy as they sometimes call it. This was an American experiment. What they created, they called themselves an experiment. You all know. They said, people would ask them, what have you created here? Well, it's a republic. If you can keep it, we don't know. Can you keep it? We don't know what we're doing, but we're doing the best we can. Maybe we'll make some mistakes. In fact, you bet we're going to make some mistakes, but we have to start here and now. The American Revolution, in my view, was not, well, it was 2 revolutions. I was going to say it wasn't so much a military revolution, but it was certainly. But it was 2 revolutions. It was the military and the ideological revolution, a revolution of ideas. And all the military conflict came to an end. The revolution of ideas has continued. The experiment continues. And I believe that one of the positive stars in the sky, the brightest star in the sky that shines through all the murk and the darkness and all the tragedies and the pain that we are going through in our world today, is the fact that we are living in a time where we just might be able to pick up where the founding fathers left off and literally continue the revolution. The ideological revolution is what I'm talking about. So that is where I went with this idea, Leslie, and I'd like to offer a few suggestions, which are just my contributions. And I'm sure that I'm opening myself up to the possibility, if not the inevitability, of somebody saying to me that, well, you're terribly inconsistent on this. You've made a mistake. You're wrong on this, and so forth. That's fine. I welcome that. But here are my thoughts, nevertheless. First of all, I'd like to address this question of what would go wrong, what could possibly be wrong with our Constitution? What would you replace with it? What would you change? Well, I have a couple of suggestions. If I was sitting in Philadelphia in those days, and with the hindsight that I now have, impossible, of course, but if I knew, if any of these guys knew then what we know now, I think what they might have done is written the Constitution on 2 columns. There would have been the Constitution itself on the right side, which would have been the nuts and bolts, you know, the structure, allocation of powers, division of powers, all the details over here. And on the left, there would be something called annotations. And on the left side, they would have said, this is why we're doing it. Because the kids today, when I was in school and a kid, I'm reading the Constitution, I said, why are they doing this? I said, okay, that's very interesting. It sounds like they were building some kind of a team. Oh, I had no idea why the structures they were creating were good. And that is the problem. You can read the Constitution and you'll never understand what it's about because you'll be focused on technicalities and not ideology. So I think that would be a great suggestion, maybe even in retrospect, for us to not revise the Constitution, but just reorganize it on a printed page. And just put over on the left-hand side annotations as to, well, they did this because they just went through the inflationary period in the colonial times and they didn't want fiat money again because they all suffered from it. And that's why they did this. They knew that, et cetera. Little history lesson. So I'm saying that I think it's something to think about. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to use Mr. Madison as a springboard to talk about some of these things because they're one of my favorite topics. And I just want to plant a few seeds and leave you with the idea that we are living in a very wonderful time in which we have no way of knowing what the things we do could possibly be that little seed that we're going to plant somewhere and it'll spring up in the next generation. The next generation will get it and they'll do it better and we can build upon the past. The revolution continues. Thank you.
Our next program features a gentleman by the name of Ed Griffin. What is the Federal Reserve? What does it do? What was its role in the Great Recession, as we're now calling it? Noting that last December was the 100th anniversary of the Federal Reserve System, we at Full Disclosure thought it was important to bring attention to this mysterious organization that plays such a powerful role in shaping the economics of our country. We've conducted 3 in-depth interviews with more to come. Now today, for your viewing pleasure, we've compiled just a few highlights of these first few interviews to show you. In the near future, we will release these 6 hours of interviews as complete individual programs totaling 18 separate segments. These highlights will show you just a sample of the issues involved in the debate over the Federal Reserve, but will be important for people to view the entire series to get a complete understanding of the effects of the Federal Reserve and what it does in controlling our money supply. We will be asking the question, has the stewardship of the Federal Reserve been a benefit or detriment to America? By watching the full series, you'll be able to make up your own mind about this important, life-affecting issue.
People think that the Federal Reserve is an agency of the federal government. It is not. It is a cartel, no different than a banana cartel or an oil cartel. It happens to be a banking cartel.
Author G. Edward Griffin thinks that we should abolish the Federal Reserve. Scott Minerd is on the other side of the spectrum. He serves on the Market Advisory Committee of the New York Federal Reserve Bank.
The creation of the Federal Reserve was really, in essence, a step of modernization for an economy that had grown from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy in the early parts of the 20th century.
The future of our economy, or banking and finances, are in their hands, and so their decisions will have a dramatic effect on everyone in this country and around the world for the foreseeable future. Some people have described the function of the Federal Reserve as to protect the public. Is that how you see it?
Well, generally, that's true. The entire purpose of the Wilson administration in the creation of the Federal Reserve was for the good of the public, so that we could get rid of these periods of financial panic. The idea was that if the Federal Reserve were present to be a lender of last resort, to provide credit in an emergency, to avoid financial panic, then this would eliminate the painful cycles of boom and bust which had occurred prior to its creation. And generally, the Federal Reserve has achieved that objective.
Inflation is a serious problem. It reduces our purchasing power. Author G. Edward Griffin uses the game Monopoly to explain.
Inflation can be likened to a game of Monopoly in which the game's banker has no limit to the amount of money he can distribute. With each throw of the dice, he reaches under the table and picks up another stack of those paper tokens, which all the players must use as money. If the banker is also one of the players, and in our real world that is exactly the case, obviously he is going to end up owning all the property. But in the meantime, the increasing flood of money swirls out from the banker and engulfs the players. As the quantity of money becomes greater, the relative worth of each token becomes less, and the prices bid for the properties goes up. The game is called Monopoly for a reason. In the end, one person holds all the property, and everyone else is bankrupt. But what does it matter? It's only a game. Unfortunately, it is not a game in the real world. It is our livelihood, our food, our shelter. It does make a difference if there is only one winner, and it makes a big difference if that winner obtained his monopoly simply by manufacturing everyone's money.
Mr. Griffin explains the motive for the banks to endorse worthless fiat money.
How does a bank make its money? Interest on loans. So the more loans they can make, the more money they make, because the more interest they can collect. Now, if the money is backed by gold or silver, there's only so much of it in your vault. You cannot loan any more than you have. So that restricts the ability of the banks to make money, because it restricts their ability to loan money. Now, if you give those same banks the power to make money out of nothing, they can loan a lot more of it. They can own an infinite amount of it. You see, they're collecting interest on nothing.
This transition and ending of quantitative easing is going to be a big challenge, And the longer that we wait to address the issue, the more likely that we are going to face some sort of policy error which could have a very profound and severe impact on the U.S. economy.
Adding more reserves just creates an enormous problem for the future. That amount of trillions of dollars, we've never seen anything like this. Trillions of dollars of reserves have to be absorbed back into the system without creating another inflation, another recession, without creating chaos in the world as the reserves are drawn down. I think we'll be very fortunate indeed if we get out of this without more problem.
All quantitative easing means is that we're now going to expand the money supply again, so that eventually down the line the dollar buys less and less and less. It's part of the game they play. So quantitative easing merely is a signal to us to look out. They're planning on stealing from us, plundering us through inflation to keep the system going a little while longer.
Who is right? You'll have to make up your own mind after hearing what they have to say.
Full disclosure, the news behind the news.
Our next guest speaker, who is going to talk about the Constitution and his oath of office, Lieutenant Patrick Gomez, and who is now running for sheriff for the third time. Third time's charm. And he's going to tell you a little bit about that.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for having me. And before I get started, I want to thank Leslie and TJ for all the hard work and the stories that they put together with their investigative reporting that the regular media, social media, media outlets in Los Angeles in particular do not want to cover. They refuse to cover even though they know the corruption's taking place, they know the unethical conduct and criminal conduct, and it doesn't matter. They're not going to report it because of the political influence that takes place. So thank you, Leslie, for telling the truth. I'm going to talk today about the oath of office and a little bit about the First Amendment. Everybody who is an elected official, who is a police officer, a deputy sheriff in the state of California has to take the oath of office, which is part of the California State Constitution. And let me start by reading the Constitution. The California State Constitution requires that all members of the legislature, all public officers, officials, employees, executives, legislative, and judicial, shall, before they enter upon the duties of their respective office, take and subscribe to the following oath. It says, I, Patrick Gomez, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. People that take that oath include police chiefs and sheriffs. And unfortunately, there's times when they don't take that oath of office seriously. Far too often, we elect and hire people. They raise their right hand, they take the oath of office, and they don't take that oath seriously, and there's consequences because of it. Some feel that because they wear a badge, they're above the law, that the law doesn't apply to them, and as a result, we have the corruption that's taking place. In 1887, Lord Acton expressed an opinion in a letter to Bishop Mandel Crichton, an opinion which is often quoted, and that is that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men. And unfortunately, here we are about 130 years later, and that's still true. As a result of people not taking the oath of office seriously, we have civil rights violations by government employees, harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. A perfect example was within the last couple months, 20 members of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department have been indicted for criminal conduct and civil rights violations. That is the most that has ever happened within this department's history. And it's the wrong actions and sometimes inactions of a few people that bring embarrassment and discredit and shame to so many. The First Amendment of the United States is the freedom of speech. And the First Amendment of the United States Constitution was ratified in 1791 as part of the Bill of Rights. And our country's First Amendment protections for freedom of speech went further than any English law had ever gone. The Magna Carta of 1215 did not protect free speech, neither did the English Bill of Rights of 1689. The First Amendment reads, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." While the First Amendment deals with religion, speech, assembly, and politics, I will be speaking specifically about freedom of speech. While the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law limiting the freedom of speech, very few people believe that the rights listed in it were meant to be absolute. Speech and expression not protected is speech urging people to riot, lie in court, perjure themselves, commit terrorist threats, defamation, and other things. The courts have always agreed that not all speech is protected. I feel that the freedom of speech of the First Amendment is one of the most valuable, powerful, and precious rights guaranteed to Americans in the United States Constitution. This right is given to all American citizens and allows them to speak their minds, beliefs, and ideas. Freedom of speech is valued by most people as a God-given right that is so important it must be guaranteed by the government. Americans after the Revolutionary War decided they did not want the government restricting their speech. In general, at the time of the writing of the Constitution, the concern about protecting free speech was in regard to protecting political speech. They wanted to be able to express their opinions about political candidates and the laws they might pass. If the government was allowed to censor viewpoints it didn't like, the people would end up with a government that favored certain people who had political power and oppressed everyone else who did not agree. That still takes place today. Without the freedom of speech, one's mind political campaigns and elections would be meaningless. Indeed, without the rights guaranteed in the First Amendment, the American political system could not exist. But what happens when an elected official, such as a county sheriff, who's running for re-election and is faced with an opponent who speaks out about the truth and causes the incumbent sheriff embarrassment? A county sheriff who took the county oath, the California state oath of office to support and defend the Constitution. Many would believe that the First Amendment protects public employees in their right to run for office, but that's not necessarily true. The retaliation is unbelievable. But here I am today after 31 and a half years. I retired in December 2012 as a lieutenant, and I could just ride off into the sunset and say, okay, thank you very much. But I'm running again. And I'm running again because there's seven total, there's 6 other candidates running. And I think it's important. It's about the principle. It's about talking about the issues, the truth, and getting the word out there to the people of Los Angeles County, what's really taking place. And none of the other candidates are doing that. But again, it's free speech. It's talking about our constitutional right to get out there and talk about those issues. So, thank you for your time. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you.
A couple of weeks ago, we were contacted by the International Visitors Council of Los Angeles asking us if we would host a meeting with 19 visiting dignitaries from 19 different countries. They wanted to learn about how we cover government accountability here in the United States and ethics. And so You can imagine what I said. Well, here is the fruits. It's a much longer video, but we've boiled it down to give you the essence of it.
On Tuesday, February 19th, a delegation of representatives from 19 different countries came to the Marina del Rey Library as part of a program, Accountability in Government, sponsored by the International Visitors Council of Los Angeles and organized by the U.S. State Department. These international visitors came here to learn the role of ethics in government in the United States. Naturally, their visit wouldn't have been complete without seeing full disclosure. A special guest was the former ethics training officer of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Patrick Gomez.
It's about ethical people. It's doing the right thing. And so teaching those classes, it was frustrating because you know what the policies are, you know what the procedures are, and you hear these people talking about, well, what about these other folks? And it's difficult. You can say, well, you know, I'm here to tell you this is the policies and these are the procedures and you have to obey them. But you know, you always have that double standard, which is very difficult.
How neutral is the full disclosure network in this field? Will you give the chance for the other 7 candidates who will run for sheriff, or you choose sides? You're an independent agency, but you gave us the chance to speak to Mr. Gomez, and thanks for that. But how neutral are your standings? Will you do the same with the other candidates?
Yes, we've already interviewed 3 of them, Mr. Tanaka, Commander Olmsted, and Lieutenant Gomez. We invited him to participate today because his specialty is ethics. The other candidates have not made this an issue, and therefore we thought that would be of interest to you. When you're trying to do a good job, and there's people criticizing you or you know, blindsiding you, wouldn't you like the opportunity to sit down on a camera and explain the problems that you're having to try to accomplish what you have to do in your position? It's really important, and so we look at it as a wonderful opportunity to learn each one of these candidates, who they are, what they're about. But we do not endorse people, and we do not take sides. But we certainly learn a lot, and we hope that our viewers do too. It's critically important that we continue to have independent media that will get the information out that no one else will talk about.
I would like to understand clearly how a full disclosure network operates. What makes you, what distinguishes you from other media houses? Because the stories that you are, what I really want to understand is how you get to news behind the news. Because all the stories that you are telling us, that you are investigating, should be investigated by other media houses. So is it your style of investigation, or what is it that really make you unique?
I'd say, first of all, the most important factor would be our independence. That we operate as a nonprofit educational organization, and we're not dependent upon commercials or advertising, major corporate or institutional support. That has given us the freedom and the liberty to seek the truth. That is really what's important. And there are so many obstacles out there to prevent independence in media. The truth is so powerful. And that's what's unique about full disclosure, is that that's what we're seeking, and is of the highest importance to everything that we do. And sometimes we are not pleased with what we hear, but it's the truth. And if you don't know the truth, you don't know how to solve problems, and we can't live together, and we can't resolve the situations so that we can be peaceful citizens together here in this country and the world. Well, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure getting to know you all. And I want to wish you all good luck when you go back to your countries. I hope that, that something that you learned here today will be helpful for you. And just remember, for those folks of us with the news behind the news, be sure and give them the story. This is what sets us apart from other news agencies. We get the story that just is ignored, the real story. We found ourselves this year involved, sucked in, if you will, to the covering the sheriff's race here in Los Angeles County. And it has been an extraordinary experience. It started last September when we interviewed Mr. Gomez and Mr. Olmsted and now Under Sheriff Tanaka. But what happened after we put the first interview out is a remarkable documentation of the unbelievable impact that the truth can have. This is something that we have had or developed a knack for over the years. You see some old brochures on your table, and it shows all the issues that we've been covering over the years. They're just as important and just as timely today than they were several years ago when we first did them. We now have 900 of those shows in an archive catalog with a description of each of those shows, covering policy, public policy, on issues that are raging today. We have to make a decision. What are we going to do with those 900 shows? They are so relevant to everyone, whether they be in Toledo, Ohio, or Washington, D.C., or Florida, or whatever. They're fighting the same issues, confronted with the same issues as we are here, and many of these issues that we've addressed are national. So we have to figure out, we have to find the people to help us to get our product out there and share it with the country and with the world. We need you to help us make these programs available everywhere, using the new emerging technologies that now make it economically possible to share them worldwide. If you believe as we do that our government policies, bureaucracies, and institutions have failed us by straying from the Constitution and the American principle that liberty and justice should prevail, if you believe as we do that the mainstream media has forsaken their role in holding government accountable, if you agree with us that we must renew our dedication to those principles by continuing the Full Disclosure Network campaign to awaken America regarding our current decline, then we need you to help us help America. Please take a moment and consider people you know who are making plans for the future of their estates, and equally important, who are making plans for charitable contributions. We need your continued financial support, and we want your suggestions as to individuals who might consider endowing the nonprofit 501c3 Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure Network. Thank you.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is the Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.